You could not live with your own failure. Where did that bring you? Back to me.
Oh yes. How could I not? Hello, fellow sorcerers. You've asked for it, and I can't deny I was mighty curious myself. This is Season 3 Ball Lightning. How it shapes up post being absolutely obliterated, and how to build it with the loss of the vampiric powers that really pushed it over the edge. Firstly, how it's holding up. I mean, you've already seen how it's holding up quite well. If pure Meteor and Blizzard Ice Spikes are the two best sorcerer builds at like a 10 out of 10, Ball Lightning is like a 9.8. Against Mob Clear, honestly, I think it's better than both of them. It's faster, it deletes things, your cooldowns are non-existent. I mean, watch me go through this TM92. Every enemy I get to is already pre-stunned by the swarm of lightning spears. They're instantly getting group teleported on and then melted, and I'm just essentially walking through the dungeon as if I was ignoring the enemies, but also I'm not ignoring them and they're all being killed. It kinda is amazing in that regard. And when you look at it like that, it's also incredibly safe. And when we're looking at a speedy build that can blast through a dungeon, killing everything while being incredibly safe and unkillable, that sort of, you know, is a kind of candidate for gauntlets, perhaps. But even beyond how much it dominates both high-tier dungeon, nightmare content, and overworld stuff, the boss damage, yeah, it's there. It's not quite as there as Meteor Ice Spikes, but I mean, it's still very much there, especially depending on just how lucky you get with your lightning spears, because yes, we will be playing this with a conjuration focus. Not only does it give us a huge damage bump to have swarms of lightning spears and ice blades out thanks to conjuration mastery, the ice blades handles the cooldown reduction so that we get to constantly teleport flame shields, spam them out, and more importantly unstable currents all the time, which means we don't need to get cooldown reduction for crackling energy, which means we can solve the aforementioned no vampiric powers problem in a very clever way, because the main vampiric power loss is Ravenous, that free 50, 60, 70% attack speed that combined with Ball Lightning was absolutely nutty cuckoo bananas. The damage was one thing, but the tick rate was everything. So we need to combat that, and you can't really just slap attack speed on your gloves and call it a day. So I am very excited for when we get to that portion of this build. Bottom line though, it's still good. It's still very good. It is still either tied for the first best sorcerer build of the season, or a super close second place that edges out the first places in some very perhaps important categories going further into the season as new content comes rolling around. I am surprised. I'm pleased because Ball Lightning is a really fun playstyle and I didn't want it to just be dead, and it seems like they've actually kinda successfully, probably by accident, brought it in line with just the top of Sorcerer as opposed to being by far and away the only way to play if you at all care about being competitive. In any case, let's get into this. The skill tree told me to tell you, hi. Starting with 2 points into, well, anything here, as we will not be using the Firebolt enchantment, I know, so we can move on to Cause, where again, we just get the minimum 3 out of 3 elemental dominance to move on to defensives. Very simple, straightforward start. In the defensive zone, we want the usual duo of every sorcerer build should have them, because they're just too strong to ignore. Flame Shield all the way to Shimmering, and Teleport all the way to, again, Shimmering for that DR. With how little cooldown these two moves have, the speed and survivability is just through the roof. The constant raiment groupings on your Ball Lightning, I mean, you know how it is. We spent 3 months playing it last season. Then we get our Glass Cannon, because we might as well, we are tanky enough and it's free damage, and then the usual one in attunement to reset these two consistently to have them up even more. Over to Conjuration, where we really get into this. The defensive duo off a line in Mana Shield for the permanent DR. We're spending money constantly. Money? Mana. Imagine if you could spend gold to cast spells instead of resource. Oh my god. In any case, we also have protection for that constant barriering from all of the cooldowns we are pressing constantly because they barely have any cooldown. Thanks to, well, Ice Blades, taken all the way to Shimmering, so it reduces the cooldown of all our other abilities, and indeed it takes the place of our first enchantment slot to summon that Ice Blade Swarm and power our cooldown reduction engine. Then, Lightning Spear, new applying Vulnerable, which is great, but then take it to Invoked, so it stuns everything constantly as we have massive crit chance in this build, and it's why everything is always stunned when we already get to it, which is just delicious to see, and indeed it is going to be our second enchantment slot. Last season I did do a Lightning Spear Swarm variant of Ball Lightning, where we use the massive amounts of crackling energy to walk over and summon a massive amount of Lightning Spears to get a massive amount of stacks of Conjuration Mastery. We're doing that again here, but even more with Ice Blaze on top, adding even more stacks. You will regularly see 10 to 20 stacks of this, which is 30 to 60% multiplicative more damage for your Ball Lightnings. That is amazing. On top of both of these being both vulnerable engines in themselves, cooldown reduction in Ice Blades and stun in Lightning Spear, having a lot of both of them up all of the time is just so good for every aspect of the build that we care about, and it's been working wonderfully. Then we go over to here, where we get the usual Inner Flames and Devouring Blaze. Yes, we are not using the Firebolt enchantment, but we are still very much taking advantage of Burning Synergy. Thanks to our Seneschal friend, we can really have our cake and eat it too in Season 3. Then get the, yes, 5 out of 5 Ball Lightning, of course, and take it to Enhanced, and then Wizards for that Sea of Crackling Energy, which we then grab 3 out of 3 Invigorating to convert it into more mana for more Ball Lightnings. Then we go over to our ultimates, where we get the Permafrost to get 3 out of 3 Hoarfrost for the extra damage to Chilled. This is just a nice little 9% multiplicative increase. The Ice Blades chill our enemies as they swarm, so this is going to always be doing its thing, and it's a good use of our points. Then we get ourselves Unstable Currents, and then just the attack speed, because again, we don't care about crackling energy pulses in this way of doing things, but the attack speed is lovely. Lastly, Coursing Currents into Electrocution for that extra DR. If you're doing easy content or don't need the extra damage reduction, you can put these 4 points anywhere else you prefer. Then the solution to the attack speed. Obviously, we don't care about Frostkey passives. Obviously, we don't care about burn damage. So, we don't care about overflowing energy because we're getting our cooldown reduction from Ice Blades. That leaves 2 key passives. Either Via's Mastery for more DR, which can be nice, but it's not needed with the current difficulty of the game. The extra damage, which, as far as we know, is still bugged and either doesn't work or is additive instead of multiplicative, which is a shame. And then Esu's Ferocity. While the actual fire, critical, damage, chance, whatever, we're not using it for that, is there, the aspect that lets us get 50% attack speed when it's up, and bear in mind any critical hits that kill enemies or hit bosses trigger it, is our replacement for Ravenous. This gives us an instant 50% attack speed for both getting out Ball Lightnings faster and them ticking extra quickly, and it feels like it did in Season 2, and this is kind of the secret sauce to bring it back up to that power level we wanted. Well, not Season 2 of course, but back up to the top of what Sorcerer can do right now. So that is our skill tree. Going on to your gear and everything it entails: critical strike damage to vulnerable gems in your weapons, health in your armor, and armor in your jewelry. Aspect-wise, we want on your necklace to 1.5 times Storm Swell for that 45% multiplicative vulnerable damage. We're vulnerabling a lot with Ice Blades and the Lightning Spears, so this is always active and very, very good to have. Then we want Gravitational. Of course, you need this for a Ball Lightning build. Make it orbit, make it do more damage, what's not to love? Then the aforementioned Ancient Flame, that 50% attack speed on your Ball Lightning. This is everything, and it really powers it all. Then we want Conceited for that extra barrier damage. I still wish I had a better roll, but hey-oh, we are permanently barriered, so this is permanently up alongside Storm Swell. Finally, you have a little bit of a choice. I have gone for Elementalist for the extra crit chance above 100 mana, and because you will be rocking enough mana above 100 to cast multiple ball lightnings before even dipping below 100, this works out really well, but it's less effective against dungeons and swarms of enemies where you'll be less grabbing crackling energy. So if you care more about boss damage, then you want to use Elementalist, because all the crackling energy that gives you mana spawns around the single boss that you are staying next to and picking up the energy, as opposed to blitzing forward through a dungeon and not picking up as much. So essentially, bossing, put Elementalist on. If you care more about dungeon, you can use any given aspect you want, and I would recommend Shredding Blades for more vulnerable damage and indeed more vulnerable uptime, even though supposedly it's not quite working correctly, but that does need more testing. In any case, there we are. Unique-wise, Essu's Heirloom, crit damage, crit chance, mana cost reduction, all perfect for ball lightning. Tibalt's Will, the extra damage, yes, great, but the extra resource and the mana restore is very much required, because we have a load of resource gen affixes. When we do go unstoppable, which is constantly with both teleport and flame shield, we essentially get a full mana reload, which then re-triggers Elementalists, and yeah, these two work in perfect harmony. You really want Tibalt's, as you want your raiment, always grouping, stunning, piling on the ball lightning, and deleting. Then we have Tal Rashes for that 45% multiplicative, all 3 damage sources, very easy to come by in this build. The flame shield handles the fire. Then defensively, we do have Juggernauts. You can go for disobedience if you prefer, but have a armor-based aspect on your remaining helmet. When it goes to actual affixes itself, then, we want the following. Ranks to Conjuration Mastery, Devouring Blaze, and Mastery Skills. Then you want Critical Strike Damage, Critical Strike Chance. You want Attack Speed, and then you want Cooldown Reduction as much as you can get, alongside Mana Cost Reduction and Resource Generation. Then the usual just general damage increases. Lucky Hit isn't bad, Intelligence, all stats, Mastery, Vulnerable, Damage to Close, so on and so forth. On your one defensive piece, make sure you have % total armor at a minimum, and you will be good to go. Other than that then, to have a quick look at the actual stats, well, the actual crit damage is huge. We have a base of 43% critical strike chance, going up to the 80 with Elementalist, and then the Seneschal pushes it to almost 100, which is wonderful. The attack speed going from 11 to 60 with Ferocity, again, is everything. Then your actual cooldown reduction itself, you want at least over 30%. So, let's talk, said Seneschal. On your left side, your usual setup of Flash of Adrenaline with your duration and your tactical, so it's permanently up, and then Genesis if you have it, to take it from 20% to 50% multiplicative. If you don't have Genesis, choose whatever you like until you do have Genesis. On the other side of things, we want Tempest, as is a common feature. It's just the best way of applying tuning stones for us sorcerers, and indeed most classes, and then attached to that, we want Burning Support. This is why we can still use Burning Synergy, this is why we can still use Devouring Blaze, the Paragon board, and it gets the job done. Against bosses, this is permanently on them, because of course Tempest attacks very quickly, and we essentially can use it as the pseudo enchantment slot, which is fantastic. Then finally, if you are fighting a boss, a big single target, lot of health, you want Efficiency Support for that 15% critical strike chance. However, if you're doing a dungeon, a Nightmare Vault, Open World, Helltide, etc., we don't need that extra crit chance, so instead you want to swap to Arcing Support so he can hit more enemies, more burning enemies, and more burning synergy actually used. So that's the choice to make, and then whichever you use Evernight along with it if you have it for the permanent +4, and if you don't have it, well, you can use whatever you would like, perhaps even Arcing and your crit chance, so you don't have to make the choice. When it comes to how to play it, I feel like I don't need to waste my breath too much, because it's ball lightning. Again, the build we all spent the most time playing, probably all last season. You know how it works. Cast your ball lightnings constantly, blitz through the dungeon, teleport on everyone, flame shield whenever you need mana or you need to survive, and then use your ice blades and your lightning spear on cooldown, on top of unstable currents, also kind of on cooldown really, or against any big group of elites or boss. But But talking of boss, you really can see the difference that having this extra attack speed from the Ancient Flame really makes. That tick rate feels good. It feels like it used to. If we go to multiple and normal, so we can get like a nice group of enemies, and you will see it really start to take shape in a way that you expect. Like, look at the volume of ball lightnings we actually have. Look at our mana staying at nice and high for elementalists. The amount of numbers on your screen, the tick rate. Obviously, it's not quite as good. It was an outrageous build that did need to be brought back in line, but hey, it still very much gets the job done and then some, and you see the stacks of Conjuration Mastery really building, peaking at 12 and hovering around that point. It's delicious. So, let's Paragon. Starting at the base board, let's do this. Up and to the right, we can ignore Resilience this time around, as we're going to get our all resist from a different source. So, past Elementalist, through the Intelligence as usual, for the usual, yes, Elementalist, 15% multiplicative, and lovely. Grab Erudite and grab Elemental Balance, so they can be boosted by said Elementalist, and then up left past Balance into Enchantment Master, arranged with the glyph at the bottom right. Head initially straight to the glyph, and Reinforced goes here for that damage reduction with the barrier, which we always have. Get the full cluster up and right of it, around Erudite including it, and then poke upwards to grab Ruinous. Then you want to go left and get yourself Elementalist, and then continue up to this Willpower node, head straight up past Suffused Resilience, and then all the way to Enchantment Master. More Ice Blades, more Lightning Spears, more damage. This really does work out here. Then leave it for now. We don't want to go left into this board at this stage. We want to go back and head right through this gate to your Burning Instinct board. We're still using that Burning Synergy thanks to the Seneschal, and this works wonderful. Straight down, get Cinders, go to the glyph slot where Destruction goes, and then we want to pick up every bit of dexterity we can in its radius for that huge amount of crit damage. Then we also spend the 5 points just to grab Kindling, as we may as well. It's a nice increase for little investment. Then we want to head right past this in-range dexterity, straight down into our next board, which will be your Frigid Fate board. Going all the way to this magic node, and then left to the glyph slot, where we will have Adept. Now, I had 6 points left over, so I whacked them all into Intelligence just to buff the damage here, but you can put these 6 Paragon points wherever you prefer. I like to just enhance this, because why not? In any case, also head straight down here to get Chilling for the extra 10 Intelligence to help with Adept, and then we can go right past this Willpower through Weakness here and over to the Legendary node for the multiplicative more vulnerable damage. Then we want to finally go back from this board all the way over to the left, where we will now go out of the Enchantment Master board. From this Willpower, go up and connect, and then we want ourselves the Static Surge board arranged so that the extra mana and stun damage is at the top right like this. Go up straight towards it, curve round in a little U, ignoring the middle damage to stunned enemies, and then straight down through all of this Intelligence to the glyph slot where we will put Control. Grab the Dex to activate it in the cluster around Incapacitate here, and we are done on this board and can return to Frigid Fate, where we will now go right from this Dex. We may as well poke up and get the damage reduction from Guarded, and then head down and right in to our final board, which is going to be your Elemental Summoner. Arrange it so that Reservoir here is at the bottom left, and we want to branch down from this Intelligence and get said Reservoir. The extra maximum mana really helps out, and then continue on up through Conjurer, grab the extra Dex, and over to the glyph slot where we will activate Exploit for that extra vulnerable damage, and then finish it up with the Dex that we need to grab around the place and include Erudite too. So that is your Paragon board, all neat and tidy and all doing what it needs to do. Which brings us to the end of this Ball Lightning Season 3 experiment. I'm quite happy with this. I think it works very nicely. I enjoyed coming up with it, and for those of you that are missing Ball Lightning that still want to give it that go, know that, hey, you can, and you will be performing at essentially peak Sorcerer levels, just in that shock flavor. But for everyone else, of course, there is still many more builds to explore. I really want to get around to Charged Bolts, as it's one of my favourite ways to play Sorcerer, especially with the swaps that happened a while ago. And beyond that, yeah, stay tuned. Like you've enjoyed this, subscribe and hit the bell for more. Consider supporting the future of the channel on Patreon down below. And until we meet again, a goodbye.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.